Blizzards have a way of cutting you off from the world. Roads disappear, phones stop working, and help feels impossibly far away. These are three true experiences where the cold wasn't the scariest thing outside. I grew up in a small town where winter storms were normal, so when the weather report warned about a severe blizzard, I didn't think much of it. I was 22 at the time, and driving back to my apartment after visiting a friend in a neighboring town. It was supposed to be a 40-minute drive. I'd done it dozens of times before. About halfway through the trip, the snow started coming down harder than I'd ever seen. Within minutes, visibility dropped to almost nothing. The wind was shaking my car, and the road markers disappeared completely. Something felt off, but I told myself to keep going. Turning around felt just as dangerous. Then my car slid. I didn't crash, but I veered off the road and into a shallow ditch. When I tried to reverse, the tires just spun. My stomach dropped when I realized how quiet it was. No other cars, no lights, just wind and snow hammering the sides of my car. I checked my phone, no signal. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes debating what to do. The heater was still working, but I knew I couldn't stay forever. That's when I noticed headlights in the distance. They were faint, barely visible through the snow, but they were coming toward me. Relief hit me so fast I almost laughed. The headlights stopped about 20 feet behind my car. I expected someone to get out right away, but no one did. A few seconds passed. Then a man stepped out of the driver's side. He was wearing a heavy coat with the hood pulled tight around his face. He walked slowly toward my window. Something felt off immediately. He didn't wave or call out. He just stared at me through the glass. My heart started pounding as I cracked the window an inch. "Are you okay?" he asked. I told him my car was stuck. He nodded and glanced up and down the road, like he was checking to see if anyone else was around. That's when I froze. The road was completely empty, and the storm was getting worse by the minute. He offered to help push my car out. I unlocked the door without thinking, stepped out into the snow, and immediately regretted it. The wind was brutal, and I could barely keep my footing. As we pushed, I noticed his truck more clearly. It didn't have any markings, no plates on the back that I could see. When I asked where he was headed, he didn't answer right away. "Just passing through," he said finally. After a few failed attempts, he stopped pushing and told me it wasn't going to work. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "You shouldn't be out here alone in weather like this," he said. "You can wait in my truck until the storm eases up." I told him I'd rather stay in my car. He insisted. His tone wasn't aggressive, but it was firm. He stepped closer, blocking the door to my car without fully realizing it. Or maybe he did. That's when I noticed his hands. They were shaking, but not from the cold. My heart started pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. I told him I'd already called for help, which was a lie. He stared at me for a few seconds, then looked back toward his truck. Those seconds felt endless. Finally, he shrugged and said he needed to get going before the road closed completely. He walked back to his truck, got in, and drove off into the whiteout. I stood there for a long time, shaking, before getting back into my car. Eventually, a snowplow came through and pulled me out. I never told anyone about the man. Even now, years later, I still think about how easily I could have gotten into his truck, and how no one would have known where I went if I had. The blizzard erased everything that night. Tracks, evidence, and the only proof he was ever there. This happened when I was working night shifts at a rural gas station just off a state highway. In the winter, business slowed down a lot, especially during storms. One night, a blizzard rolled in way faster than anyone expected. By midnight, the roads were nearly impassable, and I was the only employee on duty. Around 1 a.m., my manager called and told me to lock the doors and close early. He said no one was supposed to be out driving in conditions like that anyway. I locked up, shut off half the lights, and settled into the small office behind the counter to wait for my ride. My brother was supposed to pick me up with his truck once the plows came through. That's when I noticed a car pull into the lot. At first, I thought maybe it was just someone desperate for gas, but the pumps were already shut down. The car didn't pull up to a pump. It parked sideways near the edge of the lot, partially hidden by the blowing snow. Something felt off immediately. I watched through the security monitor as the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, but instead of coming toward the store, he just stood there. The wind was brutal, snow whipping sideways, but he didn't seem to care. He just stared at the building. My stomach dropped. After about a minute, he walked up to the front door and tried the handle. It didn't budge. He leaned closer to the glass, cupped his hands around his eyes, and looked inside. Even through the grainy camera, I could tell he was smiling. I froze. He knocked once, not hard, just enough to be polite. I didn't move. My heart started pounding as he knocked again, louder this time. I stayed crouched behind the counter, barely breathing. Eventually, he stopped knocking and stepped back. For a second, I thought he was leaving. Then he walked out of view of the camera. I stayed frozen for what felt like forever. I told myself he'd just gone back to his car. That was when I heard a loud, metallic sound from the side of the building. Someone was trying the service door. That door led directly into the storage room, and unlike the front, it wasn't reinforced. My heart started pounding so hard it hurt. I grabbed my phone and tried calling my brother. No signal. The storm had knocked out most cell service in the area. The banging started again, harder this time. I could hear the door rattling in its frame. I remember thinking how insane it was that this was happening during a blizzard, like the weather itself was helping him. Then everything went quiet. I waited. My stomach dropped when I heard footsteps inside the building, not coming toward the counter, moving slowly, deliberately. I crouched lower and held my breath as long as I could. The footsteps stopped just outside the office door. I could see the shadow of someone standing there through the frosted glass. He didn't try the handle right away. He just stood there. That was the worst part, knowing he was listening. Finally, he tried the door. It was locked. He let out a slow breath, almost like a laugh, and knocked softly. "I know you're in there," he said. I froze so hard my legs went numb. My heart was pounding in my ears. I didn't answer. I didn't move. After a few seconds, he walked away. I heard more footsteps, then the sound of the front door opening. I waited another 10 minutes before daring to move. When my brother finally arrived almost an hour later, the storm was still raging. We checked the building together. The service door had fresh pry marks. Whoever that man was, he'd been trying to get in long before I ever noticed him. The police said they couldn't do much. No cameras outside worked in the storm. No plates were visible. No footprints left behind. The blizzard had erased him completely. I was 27 and living alone in a small rental house at the edge of a rural town. The place backed up to open land, just trees and empty fields for miles. When the blizzard warning came through, I stocked up on food and figured I'd ride it out like everyone else. I worked remotely, so I didn't need to go anywhere. By late evening, the storm was violent. Snow slammed against the windows, and the wind howled so loud it felt like something was circling the house. Power flickered a few times, then went out completely. My stomach dropped when the lights didn't come back on. I lit a few candles and tried to distract myself with my phone, but service was spotty at best. That isolation started getting to me. Something felt off, and I couldn't explain why. Around 10 p.m., I heard a knock at the front door. I froze. Nobody should have been out driving, let alone walking in a blizzard like that. I didn't answer. I just sat there on the couch, listening. The knock came again, slower this time, more deliberate. I got up quietly and looked through the peephole. A man stood on my porch, snow clinging to his jacket and beard. His face was red from the cold, but his eyes were focused, alert. He smiled when he realized someone was home. "Hey," he called out. "My car broke down. Can I use your phone?" My heart started pounding. I wanted to believe him. That's the scary part. His story made sense. The storm was bad enough that anyone could have gotten stranded, but something felt off. I told him I didn't have service and that help wasn't coming until morning. That wasn't entirely true, but I needed him gone. His smile faded for just a second before he nodded. "All right," he said. "Mind if I wait on your porch? It's brutal out here." That's when my stomach dropped. I told him no. I said it wasn't safe. He didn't argue. He just looked past me through the window, like he was taking inventory of the inside of my house. "Okay," he said quietly. He didn't leave. I watched through the side window as he walked around the house, disappearing into the storm. My heart started pounding harder with every second. I locked every door again, even though they already were. I grabbed a kitchen knife and stood in the hallway, shaking. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps on the back porch. I froze. Then came the sound of someone testing the back door handle. Slowly, carefully, like he didn't want to make too much noise. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The handle stopped turning. I thought maybe he'd given up. Then I heard him tap on the glass. 3 soft knocks. "I know you're in there," he said, his voice muffled through the door. My heart started pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I backed away, nearly tripping over myself. He tried the handle again, harder this time. When it didn't open, he slammed his shoulder into the door once. The door held. Outside, the wind screamed. Snow rattled against the walls. No neighbors, no cars, no help. Then everything went quiet. I stood there for what felt like hours, waiting for the next sound. Finally, I heard crunching footsteps moving away from the house. I didn't sleep at all that night. I stayed in the hallway until morning, knife in hand, listening to the storm slowly die down. When daylight came, the power was still out, but the snow had eased enough to see outside. I checked the back door. There were muddy boot prints leading up to it, and carved into the frost on the glass, with a finger or something sharp, was a single word. The police said there was nothing they could do. No neighbors saw anything. The storm erased the footprints within an hour. I moved out 2 weeks later. Even now, whenever snow starts hitting my windows too hard, my stomach drops. Because I know how easy it is for the world to disappear in a blizzard, and how easy it is for someone to take advantage of that silence.